you will be seeing pictures and hearing stories of racial tension as well as war. Viewer discretion is advised. The Sharpeville Massacre, March 21st, 1960. What I'm going to do is I'm going to break this video into two parts. The first one is going to be the short and sweet of it, literally just what the day is at a top level. The second part is going to be a bit more of a deeper dive, so understanding what led up to the event, the day itself, and then also the impact that the day of the Sharpeville Massacre had on the rest of the fight against the apartheid regime. If you find any discrepancies in the information that I'm going to give, helpful links in the comments down below will help everybody form a great conversation and also just ensure that we are talking about the correct information. What is known as the Sharpeville Massacre took place on the 21st of March in 1960. South Africa had recently updated their pass laws, which basically prevented non-white people from moving across South Africa without a book that contained their personal details and also authorization of their movement to the area that they're going to. If not presented, they would be arrested on the spot. On March 21st, Robert Sobukwe, the leader and founder of the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, called for all black people across the country to leave their passbooks at home, head to police stations, and demand to be arrested. We focus into an area called Sharpeville near Johannesburg in South Africa, where crowds of up to 20,000 people gathered on this day outside the Sharpeville police station. Police opened fire to a crowd of children, women, and men and brutally murdered 69 people and wounded 180 more. The majority of them had bullet holes through their backs as they were running away from the police station. In South Africa, the remembrance of this day is named under Human Rights Day and pay respect to those who lost their lives and observe its importance on the day's fight against apartheid. Okay, so that's the top level stuff done. While the passbooks had existed in South Africa in one form or another since the 1700s, 1911 saw the introduction of the Mines and Works Act. This basically reserved skilled jobs for white people. The discrimination further intensified in 1913 when you had the Land Act coming into legislation. This basically tightened the grip that authorities had on exercising control over native or black people across South Africa. Think about it. Black people were forced to work on farms, even though there were higher paying jobs in the city. Due to the Lands Act, they were just not allowed to go to these higher paying jobs where there were better opportunities as well. So thanks to the pass laws, there was just no way for black people to just move to the city. Roughly about 67% of the population who only had between 7 to 13% of the land that belonged to them. Oh, and 10 years after the Land Act was introduced, we saw the introduction of the Native Urban Areas Act of 1923. This basically meant that now black people were not just allowed to not go to certain areas. If they didn't have their passbook, that meant that they were arrested there and then. Aware of these discriminatory laws, just 2 years after the Union of South Africa was formed, we see the formation of the ANC. Well, back then it wasn't quite called ANC. In 1912, what was called the SANNC, the South African Natives National Congress. In 1923, it was renamed to what we know today as the ANC. It was after a few years of less than desirable progress that we saw the formation of the ANC Youth League in 1944. Their leaders, including Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Oliver Tambo, as well as Anton Lembede. And then the more Africanist leaders decided to break away in 1959 and form the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania. This was led and founded by Robert Sobukwe. 1959. Remember that date. This is just 1 year before everything kicks off in Sharpeville. Before we dive into the day itself, I do want to give you some more context into one more piece of the pie that I feel is quite relevant to this. In 1948, we had the general election, where the Union of South Africa's opposition party, known as the NP or the National Party, had won the election, but not by the popular vote. They'd won with more seats, much like how Trump had won in 2016, even though he didn't get more votes. The NP really leaned into the fear of black on white violence. The results of the 1948 election ushered in the official beginning of apartheid, directly translated to apartness or separation, where we start to see areas, benches, trains, and beaches exclusively for white people, and then others for non-white people. Now, there was a lot of work done throughout the 1950s to prevent this, but it's a topic for a whole nother video. Actually, let me give you a quick understanding. The 1950s saw protests of all kinds continue. Spearheaded by the Defiance Campaign, the program of action is adopted by the ANC. This provided several things, including the establishment of a national fund to finance the struggle for liberation. Acts of protests existed all over, from burning passbooks to black protesters going into whites-only areas just so that they were arrested. They would defend themselves in courts. And the goal of this? Mass imprisonment, to overwhelm the government. 21 March 1960. Sharpeville, South Africa. With 1960 set to be the year of the pass, let's see how this day took shape. In the 1950s, protests in forms of work strikes were common. All the protests that had led up to around about this time had all been peaceful. Violence on every occasion had been instigated by the apartheid police. March 21st of 1960 had a clear and simple objective. Leave your passbook at home, go to the police station in your area, and demand to be arrested. The intention for this day was to comply with the rules. No passbook means arrest. Now, with the PAC having organized this protest around the country on the day, where we look into Sharpeville, we see Nyakane Tsolo, a 20-year-old from the PAC, leading the group to the police station in Sharpeville. The police were expecting protests, but nothing quite like the turnout of 20,000 people that surrounded that police station, shouting the Pan-Africanist slogan, Izwe Letu, meaning our land. Now, with the exact details from what happened on the day come from the following sources: the apartheid police who committed the murders, the protesters who were there on the day, as well as eyewitness accounts from people who were in the surrounding area. What exactly happened the moments before firing all those bullets comes from the following reports. 1. A younger rank policeman panicked and told the police to open fire. Another report says that they heard 2 gunshots in the crowd. This is what immediately triggered another police officer to say a skit, or they also may have heard skit. Now those 2 words basically mean a shot or shoot in Afrikaans respectively, and this could have been interpreted as an order to open fire on the crowd. However, another report comes from those who were at the front of the crowd right by the police station, where they simply heard a senior police officer just command to open fire. Those who were tragically murdered on the day had bullet holes through their backs as they ran away. Another report describes seeing a young boy holding up a black coat, perhaps thinking that that would shield him from the bullets. One by one, the sounds of gun shooting came to an end. There was no warning for the crowd to disperse, and the guns did not stop until there was not a living thing on the grounds surrounding the police station. The impact that the Sharpeville massacre had on the fight to end the apartheid regime. Now, the protest that took place on March 21st had been organized by the Pan-Africanist Congress of Azania, the PAC. Bearing in mind, the African National Congress, the ANC, had originally planned for their protests against passbooks to take place on March 31st. That didn't quite happen, and I'll show you why in a second. The week that followed the Sharpeville massacre saw strikes, riots, demonstrations, and protests unlike anything before in South Africa. March 30th, 1960. We focus into 30 to 50,000 people who make their way from Langa, near Cape Town, all the way to the police headquarters in Caledon Square in Cape Town. They were led by another PAC member, again in their early 20s, named Philip Kosana. This day had the same intentions as March 21st. Go through to the police station and demand to be arrested. 30 to 50,000 people in front of the police headquarters left the police almost speechless, obviously not able to arrest all of them. So it was agreed that the crowds would disperse only if a meeting with the Minister of Justice could be secured. So this was agreed upon. The crowds then dispersed. However, the meeting didn't take place. Kosana instead was arrested later that day. The apartheid government was left with no choice but to declare a state of emergency. Just 1 week later, the ANC and the PAC are banned on 8th of April 1960. Within 2 months of this event, over 18,000 people had been arrested, including the PAC's Robert Sobukwe. We saw the attempted assassination of the then Prime Minister of South Africa, as well as sanctions that were put on South Africa. A year later, 1961, the ANC launched Umkhonto we Sizwe, and the PAC launched the Azanian People's Liberation Army, both armed wings of the respective parties with their aim to overthrow the apartheid government. What we had seen from March 21st all the way through till March 30th was the first time that there was any successful challenge to the white government of South Africa. The pressure from then only intensified. The UN adopted the long-awaited Convention for the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination in December 1965. However, this wasn't the end. South Africa saw 3 more decades of endless fighting to get to the, albeit not perfect, democracy that we have today. It was said in 1960 that South Africans would never work on March 21st ever again. And so, on March 21st every year, South Africa has a national holiday, and this holiday is named Human Rights Day. However, there is an ongoing call within South Africa to change the name of this national holiday to the Sharpeville Langa Massacre Day instead, as that name looks into why this day must be remembered for South Africans as opposed to a name for the rest of the world. Well, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you learned something. If there's anything that I may have missed, please feel free to put it in the comments down below. I didn't want this video to be too long. There's many different rabbit holes one can go down. If there's any particular moments within South Africa's history that you would like more information on, I'm more than happy to do a video on it. I'm still learning a lot, and if there's any information that you would like to share with me or anybody else, let's have a constructive conversation in the comments below. And I hope you have a great day, and yeah, learn more about your country.